$9 billion. That is not a business mistake. That is a statistical anomaly in the history of corporate failure. To put that number into perspective, $9 billion is enough to buy every single person in New York City a high-end steak dinner, twice, and still have enough left over to buy the restaurant. It is more than the entire market capitalization of many companies on the S&P 500. And yet, in 2019, the marketing geniuses at Procter and Gamble managed to vaporize that exact amount of wealth with a single 3-minute video. Gillette did not sell a faulty product. Their blades did not stop cutting hair. There was no factory explosion or toxic chemical spill. This was a self-inflicted financial crater. It was the result of a company that owned 70% of the market deciding to spend a century of accumulated brand loyalty on a handful of social media likes. For 118 years, Gillette was the silent partner in every man's morning routine. They were the undisputed king of steel. And then, they decided to tell their customers that they were the problem with the world. This is not a story about social justice. This is a story about the absolute death of a monopoly. It is a masterclass in how to take a money printing machine and set it on fire because you want to be liked by people who do not even buy your products. We are going to look at the cold, cynical math of brand suicide. We are going to deconstruct the razor and blades racket, and we are going to see why, in the world of high finance, the loudest voice on Twitter is almost never the one that pays the rent. This is the $9 billion meme that killed a legacy. To understand the scale of the fall, you have to understand the genius of the trap. King Camp Gillette did not just invent a tool in 1901. He invented a financial engine that essentially taxed the human face. This is the razor and blades business model, and for a century, it was the holy grail of capitalism. The strategy is simple. Give away the handle, or sell it at a loss, and then charge a 5,000% markup on the disposable blades for the rest of eternity. Once a man buys that handle, he is a hostage to your specific geometry of plastic and steel. For 100 years, this was the safest bet in the stock market. Gillette was not selling a product. They were selling a ritual. Every 2 weeks, for 50 years of a man's life, he had to return to the store and pay the Gillette tax. The manufacturing cost of a single blade is roughly 5 cents. The retail price for a pack of 4 is $25. That is not commerce. That is a legal extortion racket with a global distribution network. This massive flow of cash allowed Gillette to buy every sports star, every stadium, and every prime inch of shelf space on the planet. They were untouchable because they owned the hardware in your bathroom. But monopolies breed a specific type of rot. When you have been the king for a century, you start to believe that the customers belong to you, rather than you belonging to the customers. You start thinking you can tell them how to think, how to act, and how to feel. You forget that your only job is to provide a sharp piece of metal at a fair price. Gillette became so arrogant that they thought they could use their monopoly power to perform social engineering on their own audience. They forgot that in the digital age, a monopoly is only as strong as the customer's patience. By the year 2000, Gillette had reached the physical limits of what a razor could actually do. A sharp blade is a sharp blade. But in a publicly traded company, you cannot just be good. You have to grow. So Gillette started inventing solutions for things that were never broken. This is the era of the 5th blade, the 6th blade, and the vibrating handle. They added cooling strips that lasted for one shave. They added specialized hinges, inspired by luxury car suspensions. They added battery-powered motors that did absolutely nothing to cut hair, but everything to justify a higher price point. This is the classic sign of a dying monopoly. When you cannot innovate, you over-engineer. You add plastic fluff and call it a revolution. You charge $30 for a pack of blades because you added a green stripe and a fancy name like ProGlide or Fusion. Gillette thought they could keep raising prices forever because they owned the grocery store shelf. They ignored the fact that men were getting tired of being overcharged for a basic necessity. They were sitting on a mountain of overpriced plastic, and they did not see the digital barbarians coming for their gates. This over-engineering created a massive gap in the market. It created a group of customers who felt cheated. They felt like they were being milked by a greedy giant that did not care about them. And that is the first rule of a falling empire. Do not give your subjects a reason to look for a new king. Gillette thought they were indispensable. They thought their customers were a captive audience. They forgot that the moment someone offers a simpler, cheaper alternative, the captive audience will stage a prison break. In 2012, the prison break finally happened. A man named Michael Dubin launched Dollar Shave Club with a $4,000 video that did more damage than a $1 billion Gillette ad campaign. His message was a direct hit to the Gillette ego. Stop paying for tech you do not need. Your razors are overpriced, and your brand is a scam. This was the first real threat to the Gillette empire in a century. For the first time, men had a choice. They did not have to wait for a clerk to unlock a plastic case at the store. They could get high-quality blades delivered to their door for a fraction of the cost. Gillette's market share began to bleed out in real time. They went from owning 70% of the US market to just over 50% in a single decade. In the world of mass-market retail, that is a code-red emergency. It means you are losing the future. The young men entering the market were not buying the Gillette hype. They were buying subscriptions from startups that respected their intelligence and their wallets. Gillette was desperate. Instead of lowering their prices or fixing their relationship with their customers, they hired elite marketing agencies to give the brand a soul. They decided that the way to win back the youth was to adopt a language of social activism. They decided to stop being a razor company and start being a social justice movement. It was a $9 billion gamble based on the delusion that people want moral guidance from their bathroom supplies. Why would a razor company decide to lecture its customers on masculinity? Because the people running the marketing department live in a bubble. They live in an echo chamber of New York advertising agencies and award ceremonies. They are obsessed with ESG scores and trending hashtags. They wanted to win a Cannes Lion Award more than they wanted to sell blades to a guy in a small town. They convinced the leadership at Proctor and Gamble that the modern man wanted a brand that took a stand. The 2019 ad, "The Best Men Can Be," was a 3-minute-long finger wag. It took a 60-year-old slogan and turned it into a weapon of shame. It showed a montage of toxic behavior and suggested that their own customers were the problem. Imagine any other industry doing this. Imagine a pizza company telling you that you are too fat. Imagine a car company telling you that you are a dangerous driver. It is marketing suicide. But in the ivory towers of Cincinnati, they thought it was visionary. They thought they were starting a conversation. In reality, they were just insulting the people who paid for their lunch. They were trading a century of brand loyalty for a week of media buzz. They forgot the most basic rule of business. You do not attack the hand that feeds you. Especially not when that hand is already reaching for a competitor's product. The backlash was instant. But the financial damage was deeper than the headlines suggested. When you attack your core audience, you do not just lose a sale. You destroy the lifetime value of a customer. In the grooming industry, a loyal customer is worth tens of thousands of dollars over 40 years. When Gillette told millions of men to go away, those men did exactly that. They switched to Harry's. They switched to ByC. They grew beards. They moved to any brand that would just sell them a razor without a sermon. 6 months after the ad, Procter and Gamble had to report the truth. They announced an $8 billion non-cash write-down on the Gillette brand. When you factor in the marketing budget and the permanent loss of market share, the total damage is $9 billion. This is the fine for being out of touch. It is the cost of corporate arrogance. The CEO called it a price worth paying, but he was not the one paying it. The shareholders were. The employees who lost their jobs during the subsequent restructuring were. The $9 billion did not just disappear. It was transferred to the competitors who actually liked their customers. This is the cynical reality of modern business. The executives make the ideological mistakes. They keep their bonuses, and the workers pay the price. The price worth paying was paid by everyone except the people who made the decision. While Gillette was preaching about equality and respect, they were still practicing the most cynical form of price gouging, the pink tax. For years, they charged women significantly more for Venus razors that were functionally identical to the men's version. They were lecturing the world on gender relations while actively profiting from gender-based price discrimination. This hypocrisy was the final nail in the brand's credibility. According to several consumer studies, women were paying up to 13% more for the same blade technology. When this was pointed out during the backlash, the brand had no real answer. You cannot be a moral authority while you are actively overcharging people based on their gender. It made the entire 2019 campaign look like a hollow, corporate distraction. It looked like a company that was trying to hide its declining market share behind a mask of virtue. The audience saw through it instantly. The competitors used it against them. Gillette tried to be the moral leader of the world and ended up looking like a greedy giant in a cheap mask. You cannot sell virtue when your own house is built on a foundation of price gouging. There is a deeper reason for this failure that most people never see. It is called the ESG trap. Environmental, social, and governance criteria have become the new obsession for institutional investors like BlackRock and Vanguard. These firms own massive stakes in Procter and Gamble, and they push for corporations to take social stances, even if those stances alienate the customers. Gillette was caught between two masters. On one side, they had the men who wanted a good shave. On the other side, they had the institutional investors who wanted a social statement. They chose the investors. They chose the ESG score over the profit margin. This is the secret rot inside modern capitalism. When the owners of a company care more about social engineering than the customers, the company is doomed. Gillette was simply the first major casualty of this conflict. They proved that you can please your institutional investors and destroy your brand at the same time. The $9 billion loss was the bill for trying to serve an ideology instead of a market. And in the world of money, the market always has the final word. To understand why this ad was so uniquely toxic, you have to understand the psychology of the morning routine. For a man, the morning shave is a vulnerable moment. You are standing in front of a mirror, preparing yourself for the day. It is a ritual of self-improvement. When a brand enters that private space and starts telling you that you are part of a systemic problem, it feels like a personal invasion. It is the ultimate psychological disconnect. Gillette thought they were being bold, but they were actually being intrusive. They were attacking their customers at their most vulnerable moment. Compare this to the marketing of the 1950s. Back then, Gillette showed men who were successful and respected. They aligned their brand with the positive goals of their customers. In 2019, they aligned their brand with shame. In the history of human psychology, shame has never been a successful long-term marketing strategy for a mass-market product. It creates a flight response. People do not want to be reminded of their flaws when they are trying to get ready for work. They want to be reminded of their potential. Gillette forgot this basic human truth, and it cost them $9 billion. Today, Gillette is a shadow of its former self. They have stopped the lectures and gone back to talking about steel, but the damage is permanent. You can see it in the market share data that refuses to recover. Once you tell a customer they are the problem, they will find a solution that does not involve you. The era of the 70% monopoly is over. Gillette is now just another player in a crowded market, fighting for shelf space with brands that are cheaper and more honest. The $9 billion meme will be remembered as the moment the corporate world lost its mind. It is a cautionary tale for every brand that thinks it can trade its customers for social media applause. In the world of money, the customer is not a demographic to be managed. They are a person to be served. Gillette forgot that, and they paid $9 billion to learn it. It is the most expensive lesson in history, and it is one that every business owner should remember every single morning. The best a man can get? No. Just a sharp blade and some respect. Everything else is just expensive noise. As we look at the wreckage of the Gillette empire, we see a clear path for the future of business. The brands that will survive are the ones that treat their customers with respect. The brands that will thrive are the ones that focus on solving problems, not creating them. Gillette thought they were the architects of society. They forgot they were just blacksmiths in the digital age. The market is a brutal judge. It does not care about your intentions. It only cares about your results. And the results for Gillette are written in $9 billion of red ink. The King of Steel lost his crown because he forgot how to be humble. He forgot that a brand is a guest in a customer's life, and a rude guest is always asked to leave. The meme will stay, the loss will stay, and the customers, they have already moved on. Because at the end of the day, a razor should shave you, not shame you. It is a simple concept that could have saved Procter and Gamble $9 billion. But in the world of high-stakes corporate marketing, simple is the hardest thing to do. The monopoly is dead. Long live the customer.